Hello, and welcome to Samuel's Fortress. I'm your host, Kirill, and today we're going to be discussing the Christianization of the First Bulgarian Empire and the Christianization of the Macedonian Slavs. In the previous video, we left off roughly in the middle of the 9th century as the Bulgarian Empire was expanding west into the territories of Macedonia, and that's where we're going to be picking up from today. So, jumping back into the timeline, the year is 846, and the Bulgarian Empire, the First Bulgarian Empire, is under the rule of Khan Presian. In 846, Presian launches a military campaign in order to push the borders of Bulgaria, of the First Bulgarian Empire, west of the river Vardar. And Khan Presian is successful in making some significant territorial gains, but he's not able to conquer the entirety of the Macedonian lands. That will come a few years later, under the reign of Khan Boris. So Boris takes control after Presian in the year 852. In 852, Boris launches a subsequent military campaign and is successful in essentially conquering the entirety of the Macedonian territory, aside from, again, cities like Thessaloniki, which always remain under Byzantine control. So Boris is mainly known for, other than conquering Macedonia, is the Christianization of the empire. So a little bit of background on Boris. Boris is a deeply religious man. He actually, shortly after taking control of the empire, after coming into power in the early 850s, he converts to Christianity. And he is the first Bulgar Khan to convert to Christianity, as opposed to being a pagan, worshiping the Turkic god Tengri, which all the Bulgar leaders had been pagans prior to this point. So Khan Boris, again in the middle of the 9th century, starts the transformation of the Bulgarian Empire from being a pagan empire to a Christian empire. And the main goal of Boris is ultimately to establish an independent Bulgarian church. So the way the church works at this period of time in the 9th century, this being 200 years prior to the schism between the Latin Roman Catholic West and the Orthodox East. This is still prior to that schism, which occurs in the 11th century. In the 9th century, at this time, the way the church is structured is it has 5 patriarchates. So these patriarchates are the original churches that were established by the apostles. The churches are Rome, Constantinople, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Alexandria. Rome uses the Latin language. They conducted their liturgies and their church services in Latin. And the other 4 churches to the east, they are Greek-speaking churches. They conduct all their church services and liturgies in Greek. And again, what Boris attempts to do through his reign, and as we'll discuss further, is establish an independent church, essentially a 6th patriarchate, that is Slavic-speaking. Now, in addition to kind of breaking from the old Bulgar religious tradition and adopting Christianity, Boris also attempts to break from the Bulgar cultural dominance of the empire and move the empire into a Slavic, into more of a Slavic empire, but that'll be for the subsequent video. Here we're just going to be discussing kind of the religious transformation of the empire. So again, his goal is to establish an independent Slavic patriarchate under the control of the Bulgarian Empire. However, the problem Boris faces is that in order to have a 6th patriarchate, which is unprecedented, we only have these 5 patriarchates, which are historical in the church. He needs a blessing. He needs to he needs a legitimate church. In order to have this legitimate church, you need a blessing from the other patriarchates. And given that the church in Constantinople, the patriarchate in Constantinople, has jurisdictional control over the Balkans, Boris has to plead with them in order to be given legitimacy to establish his own independent Slavic church within the Bulgarian Empire. Now, he goes to the Byzantines, to Constantinople, to ask for the permission to form a separate Bulgarian church, but he is pretty much shut down by the Byzantines, by the church in Constantinople. Their position is, no, this is our territory. It's great that you want to become Christian and Christianize your empire. However, you are within our jurisdiction, and you have to recognize the patriarch, the head bishop in Constantinople. Boris is not satisfied with this. This doesn't suit his plans for the creation of an independent church. So what Boris does is he makes a plea to the church in Rome, to the Latin church in the city of Rome, to the Roman bishop, to the pontiff, to the pope, essentially, and he begins negotiations with the bishop in Rome in order to establish this independent church. Now this angers and upsets the Byzantines and the Patriarchate in Constantinople, and as a result of these negotiations between Boris and the Latin Church in Rome, the Byzantines launch an invasion, a Byzantine invasion into Bulgaria in order to pressure Boris to give up his negotiations with the Roman Church. And this is successful. Boris at this time is occupied militarily in his campaigns against the Moravians to the northwest. The Moravians are essentially the Western Slavs. The state is called the Great Moravia at the time. This is the state of the Western Slavs, kind of centered around the modern Czech Republic, modern Slovakia, again to the northwest of the Bulgarian Empire. Again, Boris is tied up with his campaigns against the Moravians, and his border with the Byzantine Empire is somewhat undefended. Therefore, the Byzantines are successful in invading the Bulgarian Empire and putting enough pressure on Boris to give up his negotiations with the Roman Church. Based on this military invasion by the Byzantines and the pressure they put on the Bulgarian Empire, Boris is forced, like I said, to give up his negotiations and recognize the jurisdiction of the Patriarchate in Constantinople over the Bulgarian Empire. Boris then is he's baptized by the Patriarchate in Constantinople with the blessing and the sponsorship of the Byzantine Emperor Michael III. So at this point in time, as part of this deal with the Byzantines, with the church in Constantinople, Boris allows Greek priests and Greek clergymen to enter the Bulgarian Empire and begin converting the Slavs and the Bulgars who live within the borders of his empire. Now, the problem within the empire occurs between Boris and the boyars. If you recall from the previous episode, the boyars are they're the aristocratic noble class within the Bulgarian Empire. So these boyars actually are very much opposed to the Christianization of the empire, of the Bulgarian Empire. They are deeply rooted in their old pagan Bulgar roots, and they dislike Boris's attempt to Christianize the empire and establish his own church. So from the boyar point of view, Boris is kind of a national security threat, if you will. He's allowing these Byzantines and these Greeks, who are the enemies, as they see it, of the Bulgarian Empire, to come within the empire and spread Christianity, which they view as a threat to their Bulgar pagan religion. And these Greek priests and Greek clergymen are conducting liturgies in the Greek language, which again threatens linguistically and culturally the cultural roots of the Bulgars. So again, the Bulgars are not very happy with Boris and his process of Christianization. So the Bulgars actually form a military force and attempt to launch a coup against Boris. And they do this. They launch a rebellion attempting to overthrow Boris and destroy his plans for the Christianization of the empire. Now, Boris is successful in defending himself against this coup by the boyars. Once he manages to defeat them, he has them all arrested. These Bulgar boyar conspirators. Not all of them. Not all the boyars are part of this coup attempt, but there's 52 boyars who are the main conspirators. Boris has them arrested and executed along with their families. So he essentially chops off the head of the boyar nobility and eliminates the resistance to his Christianization of the empire. He then starts destroying pagan relics, pagan temples. Some of them are just leveled. Other temples are converted to Christian churches, and he continues on this process of Christianization of the empire. Now, although he's successful in Christianizing the empire in this process, Boris also does see the threat of this Byzantine influence in the empire. As time passes by, he too begins to realize that these Greek clergymen are a cultural threat to the Slavic character. At this point, the Bulgarian Empire is heavily Slavic, and Boris has a deep respect for the Slavic culture, the Slavic people. Again, as I mentioned in the previous video, the Slavs are the major contingent within the Bulgarian Empire, population-wise, and he sees this this attempt by the Greeks to spread their Hellenic culture within the empire as a threat to the Slavic and, to a lesser extent, Bulgar culture of the empire. So what Boris does is he again turns to Rome. He again turns to the bishop in Rome as an attempt to again try to reestablish an independent Bulgarian Slavic church. Now, he's comfortable doing this time because the war against the Moravians has ended, and Boris has moved his soldiers from the northwestern parts of the empire to the border with the Byzantines. He's reinforced his border. He's comfortable that the Byzantines cannot invade, and therefore, once militarily he feels secure, he launches again a mission to Rome to try to establish an independent Bulgarian Slavic church with the blessing of the Pope in Rome, of the Pontiff in Rome. Now, I don't want to get too... This is a very complicated process that Boris gets into, trying to play... He's essentially playing the bishop in Rome off against the bishop in Constantinople. Again, his goal is not to be under either the jurisdiction of Constantinople or the jurisdiction of Rome. He's attempting in this period to play one side off against the other in order to ultimately create his own church. And he's successful in doing this. I'll spare you the details. It's quite tedious going through all that, but all you need to know is Boris is successful in playing one church off the other, and eventually around the year 870, the church in Constantinople grants Boris his independent patriarchate, his own independent Bulgarian church. And again, this is unprecedented. This is never, although there are national churches today, there is a Russian church, Bulgarian church, Serbian church, etc. At this time, that is unprecedented. Bulgaria is the first country, the first empire to have their own national church, so to speak, and this occurs in the year 870. Now, while this whole process is occurring, in Thessaloniki, there are two brothers. These brothers are Cyril and Methodius. Cyril and Methodius are monks. They are the sons of a Byzantine official. And the goal of Cyril and Methodius is to convert the Slavic peoples to Christianity, not only in the Bulgarian Empire, but in Moravia, where the Western Slavs live. Cyril and Methodius, in order to convert the Slavs, try to create a Slavic literary language. Again, the Slavs are not literate. They don't have a written language. They are illiterate, so to speak. So the goal of Cyril and Methodius is to create a Slavic alphabet and to create a standardized Slavic language in order to conduct liturgies in Slavic so that the Slavic people can understand Christianity, understand the gospel, understand the liturgy. So what Cyril and Methodius do is they try to standardize the Slavic dialect in Macedonia. So again, they're from Thessaloniki, from the region of Macedonia, and the Slavic dialect that is spoken in Macedonia becomes the basis of Old Church Slavonic, which is what we call the standardized church language that Cyril and Methodius established. Now, Cyril and Methodius, they gather followers, disciples, if you will, from Macedonia, from the other parts of the Bulgarian Empire, and they take this group of essentially Slavic monks and first they launch a mission to Moravia to attempt to convert the Slavs in Moravia. And two of the disciples that go along with Cyril and Methodius are Clement and Naum. Clement is a Macedonian Slav. Naum is a Slav from Bulgaria proper, from the region that we call Mysia. And again, Cyril and Methodius, with their disciples, Clement and Naum, go to, among others, go to Moravia in order to convert the Western Slavs and establish a Slavic liturgy using a Slavic alphabet, which is called Glagolitic, that mainly Cyril develops. So they establish, again, this mission to convert these Western Slavs in Moravia. And this all goes fine for a time. However, eventually the popes in Rome established jurisdictional control over Moravia, and they are not happy with the Slavic liturgy or the Slavic language being used in church services. According to the Roman Church, all church services should be done in Latin, and therefore they're opposed to the Slavic liturgy, the use of Old Church Slavonic, the use of the Glagolitic alphabet, and they essentially expel these Slavic monks from Moravia who are attempting to spread, again, this Slavic literary language. Now, by this point, Cyril and Methodius pass away. However, Clement and Naum are still very much alive, and once they are expelled from Moravia, Boris in Bulgaria welcomes them into his empire. This is where the two timelines kind of converge, as Boris manages to establish his independent church. He brings in these Slavic clergymen, these Slavic monks who are expelled from Moravia, and uses them in order to lay the groundwork for the cultural, religious development of this new Christian Bulgaria. So, again, Clement and Naum are brought in to Bulgaria around the year 886, and Boris, with the assistance of these two individuals, Clement and Naum, establishes two literary schools. These are essentially literary and religious institutions used to spread Christianity and a standardized Slavic language and alphabet within the empire. The two schools that Boris develops are the Ohrid Literary School in Ohrid in Macedonia, and the Preslav Literary School in Preslav, which is very close to Pliska, which is the capital of the Bulgarian Empire, in the eastern portions of Bulgaria, close to the Black Sea. So you have these two literary schools, the Ohrid and Preslav Literary School. Clement is put in charge of the Ohrid Literary School, and Naum is put in control of the Preslav Literary School. Now, in Ohrid, Clement is very successful in Christianizing the Macedonian Slavs. He actually trains, through his Ohrid Literary School, he trains about 3,500 Macedonian Slavs to become clergymen, to become priests, monks, deacons, etc. And Clement will eventually become a bishop. He will be the first Slavic bishop of the Bulgarian Empire. So he's very prominent and is based out of Ohrid, like I said. Naum in Preslav, his main accomplishment is to develop the Cyrillic alphabet. So a lot of people think that Cyril developed the Cyrillic alphabet. That's not true. Cyril developed the Glagolitic alphabet. It was Naum primarily who developed the Cyrillic alphabet, but he simply named it after Cyril, who was his teacher, his mentor, etc. Naum eventually, once he's kind of done establishing the Preslav Literary School, also moves to Ohrid and joins Clement there, which is why we have the St. Naum Monastery on Lake Ohrid. So that's kind of the groundwork, the basis for the Christianization of the Bulgarian Empire. Now, Boris, in the year 889, decides to abdicate the throne. He essentially gives up his control of the empire and leaves it to his son Vladimir. Boris, once leaving it to his son Vladimir, retires to a monastery and becomes a monk. Again, Boris is a deeply religious man and chooses to live out his final days as a monk as opposed to a ruler of the empire. The problem here is that Vladimir, after taking control of the Bulgarian Empire in 889, falls under the influence of the remainder of the boyars. Again, the boyars are anti-Christian. They are deeply rooted in the old pagan, Tengrist, Bulgar traditions, and he essentially conspires with the conspires with the Bulgars to destroy Christianity within the empire. So Vladimir starts purging priests and other clergymen. He starts destroying churches and monasteries, and again, with the assistance of the boyars, tries to reestablish this old pagan Bulgaria. Now, Boris, as you can imagine, is not at all happy with his son attempting to destroy Christianity within the empire and essentially destroy his legacy and everything that Boris has spent his entire life working to create. So what Boris does is he leaves the monastery, gathers a military force who is loyal to him, and deposes Vladimir. He marches into Pliska and has Vladimir arrested. Boris, as punishment, cuts out Vladimir's eyes and throws him into a prison for the remainder of his life. Boris then gives the control of the empire to his younger son, Simeon, and once Simeon is firmly established as the new ruler of Bulgaria, Simeon, again, is like his father, Boris, deeply religious. He was actually a monk prior to becoming the new ruler. Boris pulls Simeon out of monasticism and places him at the head of the empire. Once Simeon takes control of the empire, Boris again retires to the monastery to live out the remainder of his life as a monk. Now, Simeon, I should say, is probably, along with Boris, the most important and the most prominent of the rulers of the First Bulgarian Empire. He is often referred to as Simeon the Great, and Simeon expands the borders of the Bulgarian Empire to their furthest extent. He, if you look at a map of Bulgaria under Bulgaria under the rule of Tsar or Khan, they switch after Boris. They stop using the old Bulgar title of Khan and start using the Slavic titles Knyaz and Tsar. So Tsar Simeon, after the rule of Boris, again expands Bulgaria to its greatest extent and establishes Bulgaria as a powerhouse, as one of the major empires in medieval Europe. So Bulgaria again reaches the height of its prominence under Tsar Simeon. That's where we're going to end the video today. In the next video, I'm actually going to cover this exact same period of time, the rule of Tsar Boris, of Khan Boris, but from a cultural and kind of societal perspective as opposed to a religious perspective. We're going to talk about how Boris changed the culture within the Bulgarian Empire and how he changed it from a Bulgar culture to a Slavic culture. So until then, stay tuned. I will see you next time, and thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.